about Ukraine and Russia's invasion today, Rod.
Yes, the invasion of Ukraine.
The invasion of Ukraine. I listened to an interview with Timothy Schneider, the author of Bloodlands. You read it, apparently. I have not.
Uh-huh.
But
that's a heavy book. That is a heavy going book. Bloodlands, I'll tell you. It's about Ukraine, actually. I mean, Ukraine is part of the Bloodlands that he's describing.
Okay.
Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
The land between Nazi Germany and Soviet Union they got the worst brunt of the whole thing, and that's what the book is about. All those.
Well, they say it's the worst in the history of war. The worst things happened
in that valley of land,
in that area.
Yeah. So
yeah, well, I haven't. I must read it. So yeah, I'll just say a few things about what he said. So we can start with the NATO encroachment. Apparently NATO have just kept moving further eastward. So that's one of the reasons that Putin's invaded. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah.
That's one reason. Another reason is just about Western democracy. He wants to undermine Western democracy.
Sure.
Just Western democracies existing is a threat, apparently, to Putin. So he wants to. I mean, he would love it if the USA failed as a democracy, which it might do, right? In 2024, if Trump gets in, authoritarian leader. So it's a lot about that. And obviously, Ukraine had become a Western-leaning democracy. Apparently, the history that he gives that actually Russia and Ukraine are one nation is complete rubbish.
You mean sovereignty?
Sorry?
You're talking about sovereignty, right? Like sovereign nationhood.
Well, he said that historically they're one people and one nation, and they should be one.
Right.
And that is just not correct. They have a long history as a nation.
Yes.
And in fact, Lenin and Stalin, they recognized Ukraine was a nation, and that's why they formed the USSR,
right? Because
they realized we can't just be one country; we have to be a group of states. So
yes, exactly.
Yes, we shouldn't believe that. What else did he talk about? Obviously, Russia's an oligarchy. So yes. They cannot really reform in any meaningful way. So they can't make the people happy in that way. So they need a distraction. So yeah, that's another reason. Distract the people away from any meaningful reform.
Well, I would say they failed on that front, big time, actually. Yeah, this distraction has not. I mean, the people have been protesting, right? I mean, they're breaking the law to protest in Russia.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, just bringing other countries down to their level. So, talking about corruption and autocracy, if they can say, well, other countries are as bad, like especially America, they say, oh, well, they're not democratic, and it just brings everything down to the Russian level. But have you heard the argument? Well, America has done this so many times, right? They've invaded other countries, and so why should we care if Russia did it? But he made the point that when you break rules such as this, as invading other countries, you should affirm the rules, not affirm anarchy. So hopefully the West won't be doing this anymore, this invading countries and regime change. And so, yeah, we should say it's wrong. And we shouldn't just say, well, we do it, so it's okay if they do it. That's not a good argument, apparently. Yeah. What else? He said that, going back to that, Putin says it's one nation, and there's a lot of Russian speakers there, right, in the Ukraine. That is not a good argument either, because Austria, for example, have German speakers,
right?
But they're still Austria, so that he debunked.
Yeah.
What else? just democracy, isn't it? I mean, do you think America should protect democracies around the world when democracies are under attack? Should the West get together and protect democracy? Is it about protecting democracy?
Well, it looks that way, doesn't it?
Although we're not going in, right? The West is not going into Ukraine.
The West is not going to go in, and that probably in the long run is probably a good decision, actually, at least at this stage. As much as I want Ukraine to win, I have Ukrainian students. I mean, they're just devastated. That I haven't seen a couple of them in about a week now. Of course, but they're great students. They're they're diligent students, and so they've written to me about I'm going to take time off because I need to stay in touch with my family, and they're just on the phone 24/7. With their family in Ukraine. So, the whole thing. I mean, I just think. I mean, there's a lot here. I think that's really. I think there's a lot at play in this situation that is quite interesting on like a dramatic level. You know what I mean? Like a human dramatic level. Mm-hmm. There's a clear villain. There's a clear hero. Is NATO expanding too far? I don't know. I mean, like, why does Russia have to? Like, why does he feel that he needs to be so antagonistic? Right? I mean, think about how strong the economic ties are between Russia and the EU. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's already such a strong relationship there. Like, why be so antagonistic? I get it. He wants to be Russian. He wants Russia to be Russian. Like, I get that. That's fine. You can do that, but you don't have to go to this measure, I don't think, right? There's a way to do that cooperatively, right? In my view, like, if the Ukrainians are Ukrainian, right? And, they are clearly looking toward the West as their future. They want to be part of the Western bloc rather than the former Soviet bloc.
Yeah.
So the will of the people is very, very clear on this issue, right? I mean, there's really no question. And they're a sovereign state. So it's just, and the Ukrainians voted for that, right? I mean, back in the 90s, they voted to become an independent nation. And that's it. They were immediately recognized by everybody as such. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Putin, I think what he was trying to do, you were talking about Austria. I think what his imagination had in it was sort of parallel to the annexation of Austria during World War II, right? When Hitler annexed it, and Hitler went to visit when that happened, and he's a native Austrian, and he was greeted with great fanfare. This is before the war started, and I think Putin thought that would be what would happen to him too. Like, in his imagination, he thought he could do this very swift thing. Not one bullet would be fired. The Ukrainians would just give up. This is a superior army. There's nothing we can do. I mean, that's certainly the way it looks like it was planned, because they don't seem to have a very good, they didn't have a very good backup plan. That has been all that evident, right? They seem to be improvising at this point, right? So it's, it was a big mistake. I mean, I'm sure by now he is like, oh my God, how can I save face and get out of this, right?
Yeah, because even if they occupy the country, the resistance will go on
a week. It'll last a week. Like the sabotage will just be so extreme.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think agreements were made regarding NATO and where their border should be, and apparently they have broken it about 5 times. So
So that I don't know about. Where was it supposed to be?
I don't know exactly where the countries are or what the agreement was, but I think most people agree that they did break the original agreements.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, Ukraine is the final straw, isn't it? Because they're right on their border, and
they're literally
on. Finland. Although apparently Finland and Sweden, this might be a result of it, that Finland and Sweden will join because they feel that they'll have no choice,
Yeah.
So as you say, a lot of it's probably backfired a lot. But apparently he said that at the end of the Cold War, the conditions that were brought about was, these are his words, the greatest geopolitical catastrophe.
Yeah.
So
that's
he's not just not happy with what transpired.
No, he just lived his whole life in resentment. Just a complete, very low-minded goals, in my view. Don't you think?
Yeah.
No. I mean, he has proven himself not to be a great strategist and all, right? He's proven himself to just be a very small-minded, completely sociopathic, power-hungry person. Whose grand vision of life is the former Soviet Union. I mean, that's as far as his outlook can go.
Yeah. And democracy. He just wants to bring down democracy as much as possible.
He's been such a cyber saboteur.
Right. Yes, I heard that the 2016 the meddling of the U.S. elections was a direct result of the Crimea sanctions.
Right.
When the West put the sanctions on over Crimea, that was a result. So, in many ways, it started from there.
But NATO was created as an anti-Russian force. I mean, that was its purpose, actually. Right? Yes. I mean, it was born as an organization to counter Russia, right? I mean, and so I understand Putin's deep concern that suddenly this independent nation next on his border wants to join NATO, right? Is very outspoken about that, and qualifies, right? I mean, there's really no reason why Ukraine, in terms of being democratic and all that, but I mean, this invasion was just, I think it was a big miscalculation in a major way, and it just shows you, like, one thing I actually love about this, is, I mean, not that, like, love is not the best word, but, like, one thing that has really struck me in this is it's a good example of how the human spirit prevails over even, like, the biggest armies. Like, on day one, everybody thought it was over, right? I mean, that was the consensus of all the experts, right? And everything that's been happening, that's been unfolding, has just flown in the face of what the status quo has been. So this has been a really, in some ways, disruptive event, right, for Europe.
Yeah. I think that's another one of his goals, is to show the weaknesses in Europe. So, for example, I mean, there's so much Russian money in London. I've heard it being called as Londongrad. So it's very difficult for us to break away from that. Germany, getting their gas from Russia.
Yeah.
So
exactly,
it's difficult to show a united front when we are so involved with them.
Exactly.
And I think in the future we have to start. I mean, we're going to have to become energy independent in Europe from Russia.
Yeah.
You can't rely on these states,
Yeah. Well,
the same values.
But it does beg the question: can we not trust the state of Russia, or can we just not trust Putin? Right? I mean, I think there is a question there, right? Like, I think, because Angela Merkel is the one who really made all those, she made all those agreements with Russia and really staked Europe's future, energy future on Russia.
Regarding the gas, Nord Stream.
And the guy that she made these agreements with has now, it turned out to be a total sociopath, right? Like a complete total off the grid, right? So that was a miscalculation of character, but is it a miscalculation of strategy? I don't know, right? I mean, is it a bad idea to bring your enemies into your economic interest? I mean, as a way of keeping peace, right? I mean, I don't think she can be totally faulted, right? But but the fact remains that, what would happen if Europe just suddenly stopped getting all their energy from Russia? I mean, how long do you think it would take for a new system, a workable system, to come up and be up, be up and running?
Well, nuclear certainly takes time. 15, 20 years to start building nuclear reactors.
I mean, how long would it take Europe to have alternate sources to replace Russian?
Well, that's what I mean, nuclear energy.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Germany
takes a long time.
Oh, very long time. But Germany went, they closed all theirs too, right? Like, their policy has also been, not only our future is going to be Russia, but we're not going to do nuclear. Yeah.
That's a problem. Yeah.
That's just a crazy. Yeah, I don't know what to, because I personally think that nuclear is at least a great intermediary.
It's necessary, absolutely, to get away from the fossil fuels. Yeah, I mean, France is 80%, I think, nuclear. So I presume Germany would get a lot of their power from them. I don't know.
So back to Russia. What do you think is going to be the outcome of this? This is now day 5.
They will take the capital. They will oust the president, and then they'll possibly years of counterinsurgency backed by the West. I mean, it's going to be pretty terrible, I imagine. I don't really see him retreating, but who knows? Of course, who knows?
Well, he could be deposed.
He could be deposed by insiders, an inside job.
Yeah, I mean, the sanctions have been so extreme. I don't know how they're gonna. I mean, I guess they could become completely independent, and just grow all their own food and just use their own sources of oil.
Well, Ukraine is a incredibly rich in resources, isn't it? So if they do take control, they've got wheat and gas and titanium and all sorts of stuff. And then there's China, isn't it? If China are backing Russia, then they probably already made some deal economically to support them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is good maybe for China, that the eyes are now away from the South China Sea and what China are doing there, possibly Taiwan. So yeah, it's kind of it could be a realignment of powers. That it's a rise of China and Russia.
Yeah.
As a counterbalance to the West, long term. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it remains to be determined. This is a story in progress.
But you think it's just mainly Putin, and if he was deposed, then there could be a very different policy from Russia. It's not deeper than Putin.
Well, I mean, I just wonder. I don't have any evidence to back. I don't know what's going on inside the Kremlin, but I would imagine not everybody's completely on board, especially with what's going, right? Like, maybe they were tentatively on board if it was a one-day strike and it actually succeeded the way they thought it would. Great, that would have been a glorious moment. Like, Putin would have been a sort of hero in a certain way, right? Like, if that had happened, we would have thought it was just like completely odious, right? But he would have, in some circles, that would have been like, proud of him, right? But this is going so badly, I think, for the Russians. I mean, they're not admitting that yet, and they still could very well take Kiev, right, or Kyiv, but I don't know, man. I think
long term. Yeah.
I think it's already. I think the Ukrainians have already won. You know, in a way, like
Yeah.
the Russians might take the city for a few weeks or something, but I just don't think it will.
But it could be years because as you said, the military might. You can't really fight Russia.
Yeah, but the
And
military might. Well, yeah. Well, yes, you can. That's what the Ukrainians are proving. You can fight them, and they're winning, right? I mean, not winning. Maybe that's a strong word, too strong of a word, but they're certainly holding back and reducing the morale. Morale means so much on the battlefield, right? So the Russians have more bombs and tanks and weaponry, but the morale. These are 18-year-old kids going to Ukraine, having no idea why they're going.
Yeah. But there'll be a lot of propaganda, won't there, for the Russians? They won't.
Yeah, but they're in a country. They're occupying a country of people who speak their language, and so they're having interactions. I've seen the videos of people are filming interactions between Ukrainians and the Russian soldiers, where the Ukrainians are just berating them because they're kids. You know, the soldiers are kids, and the people are just coming out and berating them. And there's no way these soldiers could say, oh, we don't know this information that's happening right here on the street, right? I mean, so I think that's a factor, right? Morale has certainly been the factor that has lifted the Ukrainians, right? So,
sure.
I don't know. Right now, I would put my money on Ukraine, actually.
So you think there'll be a retreat soon?
Yeah. I think Putin he'll have to negotiate some way to get him out of it without losing everything, or he'll just get deposed. I mean, I think the sanctions that they have now, I just read about them before I talked to you. I mean, these are extreme measures. Russia has now been cut off from hundreds of billions of dollars in reserves that they have in foreign banks. So I mean, how are they going to continue? Some countries are boycotting them, so there's not a lot of foreign currency coming in anymore.
But to come back against that, if you look historically of the effect of sanctions, it seems to just hurt the people. It never really deposes the government. I mean, North Korea being a good example. And of course, they can manufacture the story, can't they? So this is another example of Western democracy attacking Russia, can't they? That'll be the story.
That's right. But again, they're fighting an enemy who speaks their language, right? Who are telling them, "Why are you here?"
Well, I mean, in Russia, when those sanctions hit hard and people really find it difficult to get food or whatever, that'll be the story. It's another example of.
Yeah,
Western
but then that'll be the end of Putin. I mean, if there's social unrest due to food, he's gone, right? There's no way if there's no support.
But it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't seem to happen like that. I mean, look at North Korea, starvation, but they don't. The leader's still there.
I don't think Putin has the support that you think he does. Actually, I think he's a bit isolated, actually, in the Kremlin. And the way it's gone, I really believe at this point there are probably some of these oligarchs and maybe even some generals who are wanting a way out. That does not mean occupation of Ukraine. Like they're looking for a way out that doesn't make Russia look like complete fucking idiots, right? Now, how are they going to do that? I don't know.
Let's hope so.
Ukraine has to give them something, right? Maybe a promise of not joining. I mean, they got to. or they just have to beat them militarily, which could actually happen, right? I mean, we're talking about very, inner city, urban zones where this fighting is happening. I mean, that puts the foreign enemy at a severe disadvantage. People are in apartments and hiding in this corner. I mean, people are attacking them from all sides. This is a very tough battle that the Russians have to fight to win at this point. And
of course, a lot of Western military
that's
weapons.
flowing in. Yeah,
Western weapons.
That's flowing in because the Western side is wide open. It's like Poland and Moldova, right? So their weapons are coming through those countries, and so over there they have a friend. This is not like what Stalin had. I mean, that's what Putin wants. Putin has like an imagination of I want to be Stalin, right? But these are not the same circumstances. And for all of the horrible things that Stalin did and all the lives that were lost and all, people believed in him still, right? Like people, even in his lifetime, even like the other leaders of the world had a certain respect for him, right? Like, I mean, there was always this thing, like people thought his leadership was somehow necessary, I suppose, right? I don't think people think that about Putin. He hasn't shown himself to be really, anything that great, right? So, I mean, I think he has strengthened Russia in some ways over his, tenure, right? I mean, over the 20 years that he's been there, I think he has improved the image of Russia in a way before this invasion. People took Russia more seriously, I think, under his leadership. And if he just kept going that way, I don't know. So.
Yeah, well, Obama called him a regional power. So he probably didn't like that.
Yeah.
Essentially weakened, aren't they? And they're not a major power economically, but they are showing that they can still have some heft.
Yeah, they got heft. Yeah. But now we're seeing that their heft, if this doesn't go as Putin planned and they somehow lose in a sense, whatever that means, it makes them look a lot less heftier, So this was just a huge mistake, I think, on his part. I think people are less afraid of Russia now than they were before the invasion. Except, I mean, the Ukrainians are in a unique, circumstances right now themselves. But for the onlookers, those of us who are lucky enough and privileged enough to be onlookers, right? It's not looking good for Russia, I would say.
Although there is always the nuclear threat. He said consequences you have never seen.
Yeah, and I think that to go to that level of escalation that soon, I think was really a tactical error too. It was impulsive. Yeah, like that made me actually less afraid. Even I was like, wow. I mean, this guy's bumbling his way through and trying to look strong, but he's not. I think he's deeply insecure, and I think he's scared out of his fucking mind now. He doesn't know what to do, and he's got to keep projecting this image that he's doing something that anybody believes in. Nobody believes in what he's doing. So that's a problem for him. Nobody believes in what he's doing. So, except him. I mean, he certainly does.
Well, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, time will tell.
What happens?
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up there.
Okay. Let me get that.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you. Get this recording stopped.